Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdy Multiverse and yet another breakdown. Today we will be breaking down and giving our initial thoughts on the 5th episode of the 4th season of The Boys. And this episode title being Beware of the Jabberwock, My Son. And this episode begins at the V52 Expo, where we get a rundown on tons of projects that Vought has produced over the years, and teases for their future slates as well, just like how the MCU panels go at Comic-Con in real life. Initially starting off this montage of films with a shot of Vought American, a little hint to the comics, as the company used to be called Vought America Corporation. We then see tons of movies from the past, such as This Means Noir, a film about the OG Black Noir, Whiskey Sunrise, a film about Countess, both members of the Payback team that were with Soldier Boy back in the day. Next is Y2 Chaos, a film about Lamplighter, then Queen Maeve Her Majesty, obviously about Queen Maeve, who I do hope we see return next season, as I feel she will not be in this one. Then one about the deep called Rising Tides, and then Invisible Force 2 about Translucent. Of course, the very first Supe that the boys took out, and a former member of the Seven. And finally is the Dawn of the Seven movie, something we saw the characters go through filming back in season 2. And of course the movie where the Seven takes on Stormfront. We then get Cameron Coleman and the Deep on stage as they show off the slate for Vought's next 4 phases, a parody of the MCU phase announcements made by Kevin Feige. Meanwhile, Homelander is watching over this event as he has flashbacks to his childhood and last episode when he took out everyone at the Vought facility. Then getting visions of his son cutting in and out of shots of himself, as he does see himself and his own son, and he is sort of forging his son to become another version of him. We then see Huey's father awake and fully conscious, and things seem to be great for them, at least for now. Firecracker is still going after Starlight and is blaming her for the death of Ezekiel, even though she had an alibi. Still attacking her for the information that she exposed from last week, and then we see Starlight watching over this inside of her HQ that has now been completely ransacked. Cutting to Mother's Milk and Monique as they meet with their daughter for how she has been acting lately, and of course, as usual, Mother's Milk is wearing an iconic rap t-shirt. And speaking of t-shirts, make sure to check out our boys inspired t-shirt, link in the description below. Anyways though, Butcher then meets with Joe Kessler as they look over some of the surveillance images from the woods, the location from the Gen V series. They look over this because they are the ones that developed a Supe killing virus. Again, I do believe that Joe is yet another hallucination of Butcher's, just as Becca is. It's almost like Becca enables his good side while Joe is bringing out his darker side. Back at the boys' HQ, as we see both Kimiko and Frenchie going through a ton of emotions. Kimiko is putting on an act that she is happy and fine, but she is clearly going through something, and it is likely connected to the whole Shining Light situation, especially after last week. While Frenchie is going through the fact that he admitted to Colin that he did kill his family, which is where Butcher comes in and suggests that they go after this Supe killing virus and maybe test it on Victoria Newman first. Obviously, Mother's Milk is still wondering how Butcher came around to take out Ezekiel and in the way that he did. But even he does not know himself, as he did black out. And speaking of Ezekiel, we then head back to the expo where they display a memorial section for him, while the Deep and Cameron Coleman clash on stage, as the Deep is taking his reports very personal. Sister Sage then approaches A-Train and talks about a leak, and that someone amongst the team or close to them is giving information out to the boys. She is quote-unquote so keen on finding out who it is, as information doesn't just run out like that, hinting at the fact that she does know that it was A-Train, but I do believe that she is willing to keep that secret as she possibly continues to pull the team apart bit by bit from within. Butcher and M at the prison now, meeting with the returning character of Stan Edgar. Stan has been granted presidential pardon by Robert Singer as long as he helps find the virus with the boys. Now, at first he does say no until he is also promised custody over Zoe, Victoria Newman's daughter, who he now learns has been shot up with Compound V. And as he leaves the prison, all dressed up as usual in a sort of kingpin-like fashion, we do see that he also has an ankle monitor on. So he is in fact trackable. Back at the hospital with Hugh as he still seems in high spirits. Daphne ends up giving Huey her old engagement ring so that he can end up marrying Starlight. She leaves the room and Huey wonders why his father gave her DNR over him. And he explains that he did not want to end up like their old cat, Jar Jar. But this eventually does lead into their final scenes as Huey has to make the final decision. We can see that the negative effects of the Compound V are starting to mix in with the fact that he was previously pronounced brain dead, as he is starting to develop memory issues. The boys arrive at the lab where the door has already been opened and it turns out to be a complete bloodbath, with tons of animals being held in cages as they are being injected with V. Victoria arrives almost immediately after they do, and they end up agreeing to search the area for a man named Samir. Now, before she entered the room, we of course saw her bloody the nose of everyone in the room, just in case she needed to pop a few heads. All but Stan Edgar, who was, and likely still is, somewhat of that father figure to her. We then see Adam Burke meeting with Homelander and Ryan as they discuss Ryan's show called Super School, which he ultimately does not want to do, so they just scrap it. After Adam is forced to give Ryan his wallet and keys, in which we actually do see him keep as he leaves the room with the car keys in hand even after he rejected them. As the two walk down the hallway, Homelander talks about his childhood and how he was always made to listen to others and do as he was told. He says that he realizes that he has been doing the same exact thing to Ryan, but he promises that he is going to stop now. Stan and Victoria speak with one another as they make their way through this farmland, which Victoria has transformed into a laboratory and testing grounds for this virus, all in hopes of finding a way to control Homelander. They all get inside of a barn where they find a bunch of souped up chickens. Now at the Vought Tower where Cameron Coleman breaks up with Ashley. Now obviously this is not going to go over well, as we do see later in the episode, Ashley does get her revenge. Here, Sister Sage and Firecracker actually go at it themselves, and again I do think Sage is playing a sort of long game, using her intelligence to manipulate and plan out the team accordingly, so that they slowly fall apart. As the team at the farm continues searching for Samir, Starlight displays that rage that continues to build up in her, as she ends up attacking Newman. Her powers seem to be faulty lately, so she has to go straight hand to hand. But obviously here, Newman has no interest in fighting her or popping her head. Meanwhile, in the background, Butcher is pulled off to the side as he finds the rabbit that he freed earlier, with a symbiotic sort of creature bursting from its body. And it sort of looks like it's trying to attach to Butcher as well. I mentioned in last week's breakdown that I do believe Butcher's powers are possibly symbiote-like in a way, and this could very well be hinting towards that even more. Back at the hospital as Huey's father is on the loose and with powers now. He is able to phase through walls and, well, people as well, much like Kitty Pryde from Marvel, but he is out of control and he's taking people with him. This, mixed with his memory, is extra dangerous. Back at V52 once more as we see the Guardians of Godolkin, being Sam and Kate from the Gen V series, announcing their own project. Backstage, we see Ryan help out Bonnie with Adam, as he forces him to apologize to her and embarrass himself in front of her, the two, and basically everyone else backstage, as he then has her slap him continuously, as him and Homelander both watch entertained with that evil-like smirk on both of their faces. Frenchie and Starlight start having a pretty serious and deep talk as Frenchie is unable to forgive himself for the things that he has done. And Starlight is just struggling with everything going on, especially after what happened last week with Firecracker. Their talk gets cut short though as more souped up animals show up and attack them. First a bull, then a ton of flying vampire-like sheep. They do end up running off into another barn where they find Samir, who is Zoe's father, and Stan Edgar's former lead scientist. Samir mentions that the first animal he ever experimented on was a hamster, and this could very well be referencing the hamster that we saw back in season 3 that was souped up. Samir has the last dose of this virus, but they need to use it to get the souped up animals off of them, and which they do. But in the process, Samir suspiciously disappears. Only one of his legs are present. Stan Edgar is also sent back to jail after all of this, as they did not get any of the virus in their hands. So his deal with the boys is forfeit, but Victoria does end up freeing him later on. Huey tells his dad that he is his real hero, not any of the actual Supes. Huey tells his dad Hugh that he is his real hero, not any of the actual Supes, which brings his father back into consciousness. And Huey is forced to finally make that final decision and let go. Back at the Vought Tower, Homelander makes a speech to the Seven as well as Sam and Kate, who are also there, being drafted into Homelander's Supe army that he is currently building. All while Cameron Coleman is brought into the room and killed by everyone as Ashley planted the leaker evidence on him. Kimiko tries to contact Frenchie to talk, but he is not answering right now as he is now at the police station, turning himself in for what he did to Colin's family. Huey grows up, I guess you could say, and makes the final decision for his father and says goodbye to him in a very emotional scene. It's then shown that Butcher and Joe actually snatched up Samir to make him make more of the anti-Supe virus. Now, when Butcher looks up as if he is talking to Joe, Samir looks over in that direction and he sort of has that look of, "You are crazy, who are you talking to?" Like nobody is actually there, further supporting that theory that Joe is also a hallucination of Butcher's. And as Butcher's plans unfold here, the episode ends off. And overall, another great episode in my opinion, and a great showing of just how this plan to take Homelander down is really going, as both teams are slowly falling apart and drifting, it seems. This was also surprisingly a pretty emotional episode, which we don't often get in The Boys, but they did a great job on this one. And as usual, everything is very enjoyable about this series, and I never really have anything negative to say about it. This was another one of those out of this world crazy like episodes that we get, and I cannot wait for next week. But yeah, that about does it for this episode, from me at least, but of course I would like to hear your thoughts on this episode as well, so leave them down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our breakdown and review on this episode, don't forget to give it a like, and with that being said, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.